Let's get a quick take on reports this week that the costs of the Aurora Theater Shooting trial have already eclipsed $2.2 million, which does not count any funds spent by the defense team to date. Patty Calhoun from Westward. When I saw the number at first, I'm like, oh, because the defense team's been doing a lot of work. That doesn't even count that. This is just security and overtime. We haven't even started this thing, and taxpayers are already on the hook for over $2 million. What do you think?
Well, I think that is just a fraction of where it will ultimately go. I mean, we effectively do not have the death penalty here in Colorado because you have endless rounds of appeals. They all have been expensive, not as expensive as this one, and then people are not put to death. So in this case, you're wasting time, you're wasting a lot of money when that same defense team that's earning who knows how much, but we know it's a lot, actually had said their client would plead as long as the death penalty was off the table.
David Copel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Obviously, with the victims and the victim families involved, how they believe the trial should move forward when it comes to the death penalty is a separate part. But when it comes to taxpayers, is there going to be a number at some point when public opinion is going to be swayed? Gosh, it would have just been easier to put this guy in jail for life?
Well, the reason his lawyers were willing to offer a plea to life in prison with no parole was because that was a better deal for them, because the death penalty is on the table. If the death penalty hadn't been on the table, a lawyer would have been crazy to take the plea that they had offered. This is the worst crime committed in the state of Colorado this century. 12 people were murdered in a crime that involved extensive planning, many death penalty aggravators, such as a surprise attack, high level of expertise in doing, including rigging the bombs and other things. So I think it's appropriate that this case get all the resources it needs for a just resolution in the end. Besides 12 people killed, many other dozens seriously injured. It's right to do it this way, as opposed to the bad way. The death penalties were sometimes done, in the olden days, where, maybe somebody gets a day and a half trial, and it hardly costs anything on either side because the justice was so swift that it sometimes had false results. This is a system that is calculated to make sure that if the death penalty is imposed, everything has been done properly every step of the way, and that's the right way to do it.
Craig Silverman, attorney with Silverman and Olivas, also a talk show host on KNUS every Saturday morning. Looking at George Brockler, is there going to be extra pressure on him, not only with just the verdict, people want to see justice be done, but also with the costs involved? Are people going to start to question his decision?
Yeah, a lot of people around this table will. Everything old is new again. When you were talking, David, I thought about Jack Graham, the guy who took down a United Airlines plane out of Stapleton. He was charged, convicted, sentenced to death, and the execution was carried out within a 2-year span of time. That doesn't happen anymore, mainly because the public defenders are well funded. There are a lot of people on the appellate courts who don't like capital punishment. A lot of people out there, including around this table, who don't like capital punishment. And that's what it's all about. Look, when I prosecuted Frank Rodriguez, my salary got printed in the paper because they made this argument, oh, how expensive it is. Really, it's the opponents of capital punishment who make it expensive, and they delay things, and then they cry out, oh, it's so slow. It's ridiculous. The bottom line is if Brockler were to drop the death penalty would be over in Colorado. But why aren't we talking about John Hickenlooper? He's the guy who said, let's have a discussion about it. And then he got reelected, even though he said, I'm against the death penalty. Why doesn't he stand up and say, you know what? This is all a big waste of time, because even if the death penalty is imposed, I'm going to be governor, and I'm going to get rid of it. And he has that power, and he can stop it right now. He could stop the Dexter Lewis case coming up in Denver. So why doesn't John Hickenlooper have the courage of his convictions?
Mike Litwin from ColoradoIndependent.com. Clearly, it's very difficult to have any opinion about this whatsoever. But give it your best shot. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, John Hickenlooper's not going to do anything because we're not in that 11th hour period where he has to do something, and he's a politician who generally doesn't do things unless he has to do them, which is why you've seen, like, for instance, he doesn't, why hasn't he come forward on this crazy vaccinations. You know, it's like there are times when you need the governor to, where there's a really controversial stand, to make a stand. This is a place where, you know, people do complain about the money on the side who are against the death penalty. I'm against the death penalty. I'm not here to complain about the money. It costs what it costs. What I'm going to complain about is if anybody 20 years from now, if and when Holmes is put to death, going to think that this 20-year period that we went through and this horrible trial that we're going to go through and the people are going to have to go through so much, and I'm guessing he'll never be executed, was it worth doing it? And my sense is that most people will look back at this and think no.